Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Tim, and this is Freight Master Resources for those of you that are new to the channel. Today, I wanted to talk to you about freight brokers making 50 to 70% on loads from truck drivers, right? There's some facts and some misconceptions or myths, we'll call them, some fake news. And we'll discuss all of that coming up. Okay, so before I get into 5 things that basically determine how much a broker makes, right? How much margin, how much percentage of margin that they make. First and foremost, I want to really kind of address something, and that is there are other videos out there that are primarily, I know what they're doing. It's striking emotion in truck drivers, and it's really like a lot of false information or open-ended information. And it creates a lot of misconceptions in our industry. Right? Because, they were a truck driver for 10 whole minutes and they know everything about brokers. It's goofy. It's really goofy, or this truck driver sent me a text message about a load that a broker offered for $700. So I posed as a customer and they quoted me 1965. So I know that the broker's taking, 40% or more off of the load. Well, okay, that's all hypothetical. That just because that's what the broker quoted doesn't mean that they're going to get it, right? Oftentimes that shipper will counter offer. And during that conversation, that video that I watched, the broker had said that load had been there all day, right? That they were having a hard time moving it. He was already very transparent about that. He knew the load was cheap. Right, he knew that was a cheap rate, so that may have been why he quoted so much higher, because so that he could move it easier, right? But we don't ever take that into account. So, for those of you that maybe follow some of these channels blindly, like and feed into all this BS. The next thing you know, your daughter's knocked up and there's money missing off the dresser. I've seen it 100 times, or maybe, you follow some of these ones that talk about load brokers, they've never been on the other side of things, so they really don't know. It's all speculation. Okay. So I'll address some of this. So I want everybody to watch till the end, because after I go through these 5 things, we're going to address exactly how much the average broker makes. Okay. Number 1 is market demand. All right. When demand for freight capacity is high and capacity is tight, brokers may have more negotiating power, right? Allowing them to command higher margins. Conversely, in a softer market with excess capacity, margins may be lower as brokers compete more aggressively on pricing. Okay. Just for instance, look at the last 22 months, we've seen not only carriers exit the industry, but we've seen brokers exit the industry too, right? And some of those were very large brokerages and large trucking companies, or, companies that were established, for many, many, many years. The only ones really benefiting are the shippers, right? And I could use an example of in the past year, I had a contract with a shipper that we had been running. Our rate from the customer was $1,800. I talked to a carrier in the area that I worked with, very frequently, asked them if they were interested, told them what I was getting on the load, right? It was very transparent about it. They knew. They said that they could do it for $1,600. It left me with about 11% profit margin on the load, 11 or 12, I guess, something like that. And inevitably what ended up happening is, we ran the load for a while, but then the shipper ended up pulling the load from us. Like, we're just done, with less than 24 hours notice, which kind of left my carrier in a lurch, right, as well as myself. And then they put it on their board for like $900. So they essentially cut the rate in half, after a short period of time, and drivers were taking it. So sometimes going customer direct isn't always, everything that people think it's cracked up to be, right? Brokers make a lot of phone calls trying to build relationships and things, and then we end up happening to us anyway. Anywho, number 2 is service complexity. Okay. Freight that requires specialized handling, expedited delivery, or involves high value goods may command higher profit margins due to the additional service and expertise required in moving those loads. Right. Number 3 is operating costs. Brokers must also consider their operating costs, including overhead expenses like staffing, technology, insurance, marketing, right? These costs can impact the level of profit margins that brokers aim to achieve. Okay. I know that, there's this mentality that brokers don't have any skin in the game, but when you consider, especially now, for those of you that are owner operators out there, you don't really have a full-time staff that you're paying, right? Obviously, you've got insurance. You don't have marketing costs. You might have some money invested in technology, right? Your ELD and load board, things like this. But brokers, they've got to have their TMS. They've got to have their load boards. They've got to have carrier onboarding, right? Whether that be RMIS, DAT onboard, my carrier packets, or any of those. But those are not the end all of carrier vetting. Oftentimes they're using things like Carrier 411 or Highway, right? Carrier OK would be another one. So, and all of these come at an expense, but those are just a few examples of some of their overhead. Okay. Number 4 is customer relationships. Strong relationships with shippers and carriers can enable brokers to negotiate better rates and secure more favorable terms, potentially leading to higher profit margins. Okay. So it makes sense. They put the time and the work in. Sometimes they make a little bit more than normal. Number 5 is having market knowledge and expertise. Okay. Obviously, with the exception of new people in the industry that are still kind of learning, your veteran brokers with deep industry knowledge and expertise may be better positioned to identify opportunities, optimize routes, and negotiate effectively, which can contribute to higher profit margins. Okay. So those are 5 things that really kind of determine how much a broker can make. Overall, there is no fixed or standard percentage of profit that freight brokers make on the line haul. It typically falls in the range of 10 to 30%, okay, with variations depending on market dynamics and individual business factors. Okay, so 10 to 30% is the normal, right? That's the average. Now, am I sitting here saying that there's no way that brokers are making 40, 50% on loads? No, I'm not going to tell you that, because I'm sure that it happens. Okay, I just don't think I know it's not to the extent that some of these misinformation channels would like you to believe. Again, striking fear, emotion into you, and it's just a huge misconception. All it does is it destroys potential relationships, because every time you call a broker, you're automatically going to be kind of on the defensive, right? Like, oh, that broker's going to try to screw me, right? It's not always the case. The broker really might not have anything in it. They might lose money on the loan. Going back to the example of 700, if it's been on there, for so long, like the broker had mentioned, unless he can push the load out another day, he might end up paying $800 or $900 on it to get it moved. And then he's out of pocket 100, $200. Okay. Let's go back in time just briefly. Let's go back to 2018, right? For those of you that remember, that's when the ELD mandate went into effect, and there was this big hoopla of, capacity crunch. Okay. And I know for myself personally, we saw rates on lanes that we were moving that were, at say $3.50 a mile jump up to $6 to $8 a mile. Okay. I had carriers that, I said, well, I can pay $6 a mile, which equates to da 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 da. Nope. I got to have at least $8.50 a mile on that. Okay. Well, who's gouging who now? Right? It works both ways. Carriers gouge shippers and brokers, right? When the market can be high, like in that example, when low capacity, sometimes brokers can make big margins in those instances as well. But the shipper is ultimately the one that's typically gets screwed. And believe me, they have long-term memories. So when we're in a freight recession like the one we've been in, you see shippers really pushing to keep things that way as long as they possibly can. Not all shippers, right? Because not all brokers, not all shippers, not all carriers and drivers are the same. They're all a little bit different and operate a little bit different. I've got some shippers that, as long as it's reasonable, they want to make sure that I'm paying my carriers a good rate. They know I'm going to make some money on it, but they don't want me making, 40, 50% margins, obviously. And they've gone out and talked to some of the drivers that I've sent in. How much did Tim pay you on that load? Well, Tim made, he paid me this much. He made 12%. Okay. And they're fine with that. I truly believe in building relationships, right? With all the additional software that we have to have now for vetting carriers because of all the double brokering and the loads being held hostage and stolen and all of these kinds of things, I would really much rather work with carriers that I have an established relationship with. Just makes sense, right? Cuts out a lot of that, I hope I don't get double brokered or that kind of a thing, because you can do all the due diligence and all the vetting you want on a new carrier, hoping to build a new relationship. But until it's all said and done and you get that POD back and you verify everything, you really kind of don't know. You're still taking a chance. Just like with drivers and carriers, trying, to work with brokers. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. I really, truly do. And I hope that it helped cut out some of the myths and misconceptions of, how much brokers are really making. Again, does it happen? Yeah, but not to the extent that the fear mongers would like you to believe. In fact, they should probably rename their channels to Fake Trucker News, or whatever. It's just, and while they might acknowledge that there's some good brokers out there, or whatever, that the whole thing, it still strikes more fear. And I think they only mention that there are some, good brokers out there to kind of cover their butts a little bit, but primarily it's, to scare you, right? Or to create a hatred toward one another. And I don't understand that. I don't believe in it. If you've been watching this channel long enough, that I really want to see everybody succeed. We've got the Facebook group, the channel, We're on multiple social media platforms and things. And if anybody, and even if you're a carrier or a driver and you're having an issue, even if it's not my load, because I've gotten those calls and emails before, feel free to email me at freightmasterresources@gmail.com. Okay. If there's something you want me to be aware of, that I can make another show about or something, by all means, hit me with it, send it over to me. I'll be more than happy to mention it or, make a whole show around it. Because as much as I try to keep up on everything, I'm human too, right? So, I miss things as well. But we've got a new group. Like I mentioned, we've got some groups out there, Freightmaster Mafia. That's really for those that are truly wanting to network and grow. I mean, we have the big group, we're 21,000 members strong currently. Super great group. But I don't know. I'm testing out with the Freightmaster Mafia, with those that really want to directly work with one another and build relationships and maybe share sales leads, or maybe you lost a load or a lane, but you've got a carrier that runs it. Does anybody else have that? It's a whole networking thing, right? We'll see how it goes. Okay. But yeah, shoot me over an email if you need anything. If you're having troubles, if you're like, hey, Tim, yeah, I'm an owner operator, but I want to, find my own direct customers. But I don't have a ton of sales experience or anything, any advice you could give me or something, I'll be more than happy to help you. Right. And if there's an answer I have a very vast network of brokers, carriers that I work with. I guarantee you, if I don't have the answer, I know somebody who does. Okay. And I keep the email monitored pretty often. So unless you email me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you might have to wait a few hours for me to reply, but I will reply to you. And again, on the videos, I'd love your feedback on this. Okay. Or any of the shows that we do. I love that. The comments, and even if you don't agree with me, tell me. Okay. Just keep it civil. All right. But that's what it's all about. It's exchanging our ideas. Maybe there's something about this that I'm not, looking at directly. So, I appreciate any feedback that anybody has. And again, visit our sponsors. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I hope everybody has a great day. I'm out there rooting for you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.